Hey guys, hi Roma, how are you doing today?
Hello, all good, thank you, and you?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. The topic for today is engineering culture, and we believe that you are very well positioned as a CTO of such a huge company to talk about that, because you probably know a thing or two, especially given the amount of time you spent in that.
When I've joined company, we had around 20 people, so it wasn't that small team. But if you're talking about engineering, it was just one engineering team, and I think we had maybe 7, maybe 8 engineers total. They were all reporting to me, and I was the only engineering manager until we had I think 20 engineers. So I think when we had more than 20 engineers, we hired our first engineering manager, and basically that where we introduced a little bit of hierarchy. But for a long time we were very flat. It was a very different experience because basically you work directly with individual contributors. You even check pull requests. Sometimes you do pull requests on your own, and it's a completely different stage right now when we have engineering managers, some directors, maybe VP of engineering. Well, even though I try to write some code, I try not to push this into production. So yeah, it's a different stage. And I think in the middle, we had the stage when, so right now we have 200 engineers in my organization. And sometimes I kind of see someone in the room and I don't know whether it's engineer or, I know, product designer or whatever. I think I knew everyone until, let's say, 100 engineers. So I knew everyone faces, I knew what they're doing and so on. But after 100 engineers, you become very detached from the ground. And I think this is the most dangerous stage of the company. Kind of you believe that you know what's going on, but you actually don't know. And then I actually believe that it's also it's not like stages where you have this concrete boundary between two stages. It's more like a kind of gradient, or I know everything is going slowly from one stage to another, and these stages are really small. And I think it's one thing to manage one team. It's a different it's a different story to manage 5, 7, 10 teams, and it's completely different story to manage 30 teams. And it's also as a CTO, for me, it was very different story to manage individual contributors, and now to manage managers of managers. And I think it's kind of influenced culture a lot.
Nice overview, and I want to keep you a little bit aligned with that and ask you about your culture, about your engineering culture, and how it evolved through these stages. As you mentioned, they are not very concrete. There is no strict boundaries. So
yeah.
Probably some things they are drifted from one to another, but overall, how was it evolving over years?
Yeah. I actually believe that the core values, the core principles, they were established early days, and I believe they still work. And I think we had some drifts of the culture over the years, but I don't believe it was a major change. When we were small, we were very kind of data driven, very focused on learning. We did a lot of experiments, we had a lot of analytics and so on. We still do this, even though we are kind of completely different organization. We have 10 times, maybe 20 times more engineers in the company. So I think the values and culture is more or less the same. I think what changed over time, I think, we started as a monocultural, we were in the same country, in the same office, speaking the same language, and being in the same room. And now we have engineers across the whole Europe. We are distributed. A lot of people work remotely. So I think it kind of changed our culture a lot. And then also over time, we had a lot of small and big crises. And basically we learned through those crises a lot. And basically, I think what we learned is how to be resilient. And I think at the beginning where we were less resilient, and now we are much more resilient. But core values, the core principles, they're still the same. We still believe that we only win as a team, and we assign OKRs to the team, not the person. Ownership of the code is also team based, not individual based. So there are a lot of the same principles that were established early stage, let's say. And I think basically, I think it will remain the same. I mean, like the culture will remain the same until we change some leaders in the organization. So, for example, I don't know, like new CTO, new CEO, or like I don't know, like significant new board of directors member that kind of say, okay, fine, you know, like we are not believing in this anymore. Let's change something. Yeah. But as long as you have the same CEO, the same kind of like C-level team, the same kind of like leaders, I think the culture will remain relatively the same. Yeah.
Roma, you have already mentioned a couple times that you became more resilient, that you started to manage crises better, and that's obviously also like an indispensable skill of the company, I believe, especially the companies that exist for like over a decade, right? Just out of curiosity, could you remember maybe like a few oh no moments, as I call them, you know, when something was like very, very close to break or to affect the whole business, or things that required you to act really, really quickly, obviously through the prism of engineering culture, or maybe not exactly through the prism of engineering culture, but something that you had almost like to drop everything and go almost like fix it, right? What was like the most memorable for you, your, you know, personal nightmare sort of thing?
Well, I think this is basically the difference between successful companies and not that successful companies is how you deal with this like black swarms or like crises. And I think every successful startup has a lot of issues like that. And in Flo history, I think we have such crises like smaller or bigger, like every 6 or 9 months. For example, the first crisis that I remember when our competitors launched monetization and we had no monetization at all. And then it took us like 3 or 4 months to launch something kind of just to stay competitive. I think it was very significant moment. And I think, yeah, half of our team worked very hard to launch this. But I think it's kind of like this type of crisis, they are very common for many companies. Like every company has a competitors that sometimes do something that is unexpected and you need to catch up. But I think what is unique for Flo is that also we faced a lot of challenges related to, like, for example, when we moved like all our engineers from Belarus to Lithuania in a couple of days, just because like situation in the region was not stable. And then the COVID also was a big issue. And then we had a big media attention due to our privacy. Even though we haven't done anything kind of bad, you still, whenever something big is writing about you, like Wall Street Journal, it's a big, you're in spotlight and you need to act fast. And at that time we had like a huge hackathon, and basically all engineering worked 7 days per week, like almost like 20 hours a day, just to kind of change some of the parts of our architecture. And for that you need like very dedicated engineers. Not every engineer is ready to say, okay, family, you know, I need to work. Goodbye. See you in 1 week. Yeah, it's kind of requires a lot of dedication and also like quite strong belief in the mission of the company. And then a couple of recent examples: Roe versus Wade situation, when abortion was prohibited in the United States and many, we had to work really hard as well. I think at that time we created like a task force of 50 engineers working kind of simultaneously on one feature, which is called anonymous mode. But then we won a lot of awards, like for example, Times Best Invention Award, the same award that ChatGPT Vision Pro won at that year. So it's kind of like we had a lot of those challenges and crises. And I think the reason why we're successful is that we were able to go through these challenges, and actually we became even stronger. So right now we are like number one in privacy among all PO trackers. We work remotely successfully. We have like a lot of people kind of working remotely without issues. But it's due to fact that we managed to survive during the COVID, and then when we had to relocate a lot of people. So I think, you know, every such crisis makes us stronger and better.
I actually have some kind of observation for one of your crises. I had, and I still have, a few friends who worked at Flo Health at the moment of privacy crisis, let's call it like that. And I do remember that people were absolutely like laser focused on that stuff.
Yeah.
They were exhausted by the end, let me be honest, but they were super happy with an achievement. So I remember the times, and I like looking back, I think you, that's my personal opinion, you had a very, very nice focus, and you had a great team to went through this crisis. Because I was like just an external observer, and I've seen some side effects of that, and I never heard from these people that they were complaining about this all-in mode, 20 hours, 7 days a week. They just did what they wanted. What they actually think was right to do.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And I think it's also the reason behind this is that we intentionally hire people that kind of like, it's not like, I don't think the Flo is like a family, like a lot of companies, they say, oh, like our culture is like a family. We are more like a sport team, like where kind of like a lot of professional players, they work alongside as a team. And because of that, I think, a lot of people, they kind of like passionate and they interested in this. And for them, it's like a personal challenge to do something good from engineering perspective. So yeah, it's kind of, I think that's the reason basically, like, but it requires like a special type of people and you need to hire for this.
You probably heard about like the statement like missionaries, not mercenaries.
Yeah.
So that's exactly applicable for you.
Is there anything special about the hiring process at your company?
I think there are more companies like but we still kind of slightly different. So one thing that we are doing in hiring is we are hiring mostly seniors. And I think our average tenure of our engineers around 10 years of experience in engineering at least. And I think we like entry-level engineer at Flo has at least like 7-8 years of experience. So I think it kind of makes big difference because basically you have most of these people like 30 plus, like they're quite mature. They already did a lot of mistakes in the future. They're still learning, but they already know a lot and they mastered at least like one technology very well. So I think it makes big difference. Then another thing is that when we are hiring, we are checking for product mindset. We are still hiring people from like outsourcing companies and so on, but like for us, it's very important to check whether a particular engineer has a product mindset, and we have like certain questions, like for example, I know what kind of business ideas you suggested during your work. How do you challenge like product owners or business analysts? How do you work with data? How do you understand whether you've done something good or not, and stuff like that. So this product mindset is very important. We also hired a lot of people through hiring events. So basically when we do like big promotion and then we organize like, 30 interviews in the same day, and we hire like 9-10 people in one day, in one go. And I think it also influences a lot like how we are hiring, because basically during these events, there are a lot of people, joining those events to kind of to participate in this kind of interesting competition, like
so it's like a hackathon or something?
It's not like it's not really like a hackathon. It's more like so the idea is that like we are organizing an interview, and basically we do all interviews through the same day, and we make an offer at the same day. So like basically it means that like you receive an offer in 24 hours, like basically from first touch to the company. And then we also have like a small prize on top, like a sign-on bonus for those who join these events. But also it's a lot of like kind of a lot of people at the same time they kind of like in the interview process. So like we may have like 7-10 parallel tracks of interviews. And basically it's like it's a bit competitive environment. A lot of people, they kind of join just to check whether they able to go through this process and get this kind of a bonus at the end. And it's kind of like attract, I think, slightly different audience than just normal hiring. And I think we hired a lot of engineers like that. So for example, this July we hired like 10 backend engineers in one day. So it was quite a big kind of achievement. And yeah, I think it influenced culture a lot as well.
I do have a question. Sorry, I need to jump in. It's very impressive, and I'm not surprised because we kind of knew that you are doing these hiring events for a while, and we even have like a friend who consulted with you how to do these hiring events, who tried to do the same, but you may guess, like they ended up with 0 hires. So it's not about scheduling the interviews. It's not about being able to process like 10 people in parallel. There is something in the water, yeah? You need to have something to be able to firstly just get these people signed up for these interviews. And I believe in your case, it's a company name. It's what people think about you. And secondly, which is more practical stuff, is you made it several times before. So you may be satisfied with the results. So it's not just closing 10 positions, it's just getting 10 engineers which are onboarded, which contribute to your culture, which contribute to your product. And then you repeat it, and then you repeat it. So what is the secret sauce? Why do you success in that, and others who try to practically do the same following your guidelines, they don't?
I think we have a couple of things that we do right during these events. So one is, and actually it works the same way like for regular interviews as well, but we have very structured interview process. So basically like we have predefined questions for all type of roles, and it means that we can hire people using the same principles, even though like we do this at scale, you know, like we kind of, it doesn't matter who is interviewing you, we will get more or less the same results because we have like very predefined structure of interviews. And it also reduces the bias, you know, like it's not that, you know, some people are better at going through interview or interviewing other people and some other not. We kind of follow the same structure. But another thing is that we actually do like a lot of marketing around this. So for example, in order to hire these 10 engineers that I mentioned earlier, we had to do like a big promotion. And I think we had around like million or even 2 millions of impressions of our ads. So basically it's kind of massive scale of like just advertising this everywhere. Then from this big advertising campaign, you receive around like 200 applications. So basically a lot of people, they submit their CVs to participate in this event. Then from these 200 people, you pick, you know, like 40, 50 participants. Then you make like, I know, 10 offers. And it means that you have like very good funnel and basically you kind of pick best of the best. But in order to make sure that like, well, even though we are kind of interviewing a lot of people in parallel, we need to have like very good structured interview process. So like to have the same kind of the same results, even though like different people are interviewing different people.
So it's basically very, very well organized, oiled machine, which starts from like far, far away on marketing side, and only few months later ends with several offers.
Yeah. And actually, you know, like I think it's because of our data-driven culture and the fact that we basically optimize our hiring the same way as we optimize like user acquisition for our product. We basically have like a funnel. You have something at the top of the funnel, like for example, in this case, like, and basically if you want to hire more people, you need more impressions and you kind of optimize this funnel. And when you work with this funnel, you also may find like bottlenecks. Like for example, maybe interview process is not optimal, maybe the ad campaigns is not optimal, or like I know offer acceptance rate is not optimal, and you adjust those factors to make sure that it works well.
That's very well defined, but I do want to just follow up a little bit about one side. You mentioned that you have predefined questions and well-defined structure, and you are avoiding bias because it doesn't matter who interviews you. They use the same questions. They use the same, I believe, scorecards or some other tools which we are using. I have slightly different experience about hiring. I prefer to do more like candidate tailored interviews. When you are asking some kind of open question, candidate brings something in, and then you are diving deep into the scenes which are related to specific candidate. But there is a very known limitation: you cannot scale it. And this process as good as a person who is doing hiring process. And my question is, have you been always like that well-defined process trying to eliminate bias, or at some point of time you were trying to do, probably like when you were 20 people and when you actually knew everyone and you probably been involved into hiring? At that moment, at the very early stage, you already had this process, or it was less formal?
Yeah, it was less formal, and actually, yeah, we changed the process. I think around like 4 years ago when we introduced like a more structure, and when we changed this to make it more scalable. In this way, it's easier to be agile, and if you need like more engineers working on one problem, you can kind of change the teams for these engineers and so on. And we during the interview process, we also check in for like fundamentals, not like for a particular kind of, I don't know, like this engineer is very good with databases, or this engineer is very good with performance optimizations. It's kind of like we check for fundamentals. For sure, we have like specialized roles and specialized teams, like, I know, infrastructure teams or stuff like that. But for most of our teams, it's very kind of, the requirements are the same, and they very focused around like fundamentals. Like, and we also believe that like good engineer with good fundamentals can learn like additional skills very quickly, like for example new language or new technology or new domain. So basically, but it was like it was a big change for the company, and I think it was not very trivial change, because a lot of managers, I think they still want to kind of find this particular right fit for the team, like we want this, I don't know, someone with good jokes or
I
like
know. I am this manager still.
yeah, so it's an interesting kind of exercise, but we went through this, and I think because of that we can hire like much better and faster. Yeah.
When we talk about hiring and about the processes, obviously there are better processes and worse processes, and processes that suit you better at a given stage. But one thing remains constant, right? You might hire a person, they might pass the interview with flying colors and seem to be like a great fit, but something doesn't work. Might be anything. Might be the technical skills are not there. Might be the soft skills are not there. Might be the person is just not working well in your particular team or particular environment. Can be anything, right? So do you guys have any trial periods to account for that, or what's in general, like what's the process of handling these, let's say, discrepancies between what was expected of a person and what actually turned out to be the case?
In our case, we have trial. It's like probation period. I don't think it works now, because basically I think our probation period is like 3 months, and actually what I see right now, because of this hybrid work and the complexity of the product and so on, it takes longer to fully onboard to the team and to go through like all the stages, like, I know, like fighting, this classical kind of stages.
Five stages of grief, right?
Yeah. Like so it takes some time, and I think right now onboarding at Flo is about like 6-9 months. So I mean, like engineers, they can ship code to production like almost like second day, like when they have environment they start shipping code. But in order to become like really productive and to work at the same level as other engineers, you need like 6-9 months. So it's less useful tool at this stage. When we were smaller and the product was smaller and the code base was smaller, it was easier to check engineers and to understand whether they good fit for the company or not during this 3 months period. And I actually believe that, like it's better for the person and for the company if you kind of see that something is not right. You just kind of like walk into different corners or like don't
Part
work
ways on
anymore.
good terms, as I
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, because basically, yeah, it's kind of not good for the person. Like for example, at Flo, maybe work-life balance is not the best, but there are a lot of like companies where work-life balance is more optimized, or maybe like maybe our code base is too complex, and there are some other companies where code base is less complex. So you always can find like a better place for yourself. So, and in order to find this people who are not good fit, we use like 360 peer review, and basically I think other engineers they best at finding those who don't fit. Like we basically through peer review we may find who is not right for us. And we have like performance improvement plans and all this kind of like stuff of big companies. But basically, I think this 360 review from by peers is the most important tool. And we had a lot of relatively a lot of cases when we had to fire someone on good terms and sometimes not on good terms. I think it's very big for the team, and it's actually through this you can enforce some cultural aspects. So for example, I know if some engineers they're not very proactive during the meetings and they don't contribute to the product ideas, and if they're not doing like some other stuff which is important for our culture, but they still good engineers, they write like a perfect code, but like if you need product mindset, product minded engineers, you should be able to say, either change or go. And it kind of, this is the most powerful tool to shape your engineering culture, I think.
Well, it's fair. As I say, by the way, I also love 360 reviews because I believe if done right, it's quite a healthy thing. And in the end of the day, someone has to work within the team, right? So if the team says that that someone is not a good fit or not a good engineer or project manager or whatever, it applies to any role actually. There is very little point in trying to reshape the person. It's much better to agree to part ways on good terms. Let me ask you a less dramatic question. So we talked about letting people go or higher scale, like what to do with people who don't really fit, right? But you can also argue that when the company grows, especially when it grows from a really, really small size to a bigger size, not every person grows at the same pace as the company does, right? So some people who used to be brilliant individual contributors at early stages just don't kind of work, right? Of course, there are opposite examples. Some people just strive and bloom in bigger companies, right? But that's one part of the equation. The other part of the equation, you mentioned you do hire for quite senior roles, as in the engineers that you hire are quite senior, right? And that also raises a very similar question. So how do you guys handle promotions? Do you have like horizontal movement of engineers inside the company? You did mention this briefly, that a person can start being a part of one team and move to another team, but could you shed a bit of light on how that works in Flow? What happens to a person after he joined the company and worked there for some time?
Actually, I think it's one of the kind of tools that you can use to promote good culture and kind of double down on your engineering culture is your career framework. So we have career framework in our organization, and basically it has two parallel tracks. So one is individual contributor track and another one managerial track. And then we believe that we don't want to force people to switch from one track to another just to get a little bit more salary, bigger salary, or like more money. And actually most of our engineers, they intentionally don't want to be managers, and they probably already tried this through their kind of career to be to be like a team lead or manager. I think we also have some engineers who were CTO before in like smaller organizations, but basically most of our engineers, they want to stay on an individual contributor track, and we have different levels. And basically we also have this idea that part of our expectation for engineers that they grow with the company. So like they learn new skills, they learn new technologies, they learn I know, new domains and so on. And if they don't grow fast enough, it's a good reason to say, like you're not good fit for us. We have certain level where you can say, okay, fine, I'm kind of reached certain level. I don't want to grow anymore. I'm good enough. It's in our case, it's equivalent to staff engineer. So it's like 10 plus years of experience. You can handle like complex projects on your own. And basically at this stage, we can say, okay, fine, we can stop here. You don't need to do your like personal development anymore. But we still expect from people to learn new skills.
To
It's
maintain the level, right? Basically.
yeah, basically because as you said, the company is growing, new technologies appears on the market, and basically it's very important to stay up to date. And basically, it's very important tool to enforce your culture. Like for example, part of our engineering culture is we optimize for quick learnings. And like for example, in our career framework, we have a special item about like incident management, and basically we expect people to learn from incidents. And then if you want to be promoted, you need to show a couple of your postmortems during the promotion to understand like what you learned, like how you kind of handled this learning situation from failure. And then there are like other aspects, but yeah, promotion is a big topic for nurturing the culture.
Okay, well, that does make sense, and it actually reminds me a bit about Facebook. I think they also have this threshold level around E5 or something like that. If the engineer does not grow to E5 in a year's time or something like that, it's actually almost like a turning point where the engineer can be let go. I look at Dima and I know that he wants to get more specific because everything we've been discussing, I mean, it's very helpful, right? But engineering culture is also about engineering and technologies, right?
Exactly.
So,
You know me well. So the question is, could you please try to bring us some more like evidences and examples how all these principles and topics we discussed about engineering culture, how they are really reflected in, I don't know, tools, technology, processes, which is more to the ground, like real examples, please.
I can actually show you a couple of examples. So, for example, one of our company values or part of our company culture is actually that we live our mission, which is we want to empower female users around the world with health information about their body. And it's a company kind of like culture to think about users and to be very user focused. But what it means like on a company level, it means that we have a lot of initiatives to, like one of the initiatives that we have is actually pro-social, and basically we made our Flow Premium free of charge in 67 countries, because we believe that like it's very important to provide this knowledge and information to users in countries where they can't pay for premium. And so we did this. But what it means for engineering, we also have the same value and the same culture. But for engineers, it means that we need to optimize our infrastructure to handle those users in a cost-effective way, because it's free for users to use Flow, but it's not free for us, and we still have to pay for Amazon servers and for other infrastructural tools and components. So basically, our engineering implementation of this culture is that we very cost effective. So basically, we have a lot of technologies, a lot of tools to make sure that we very effective at using our infrastructure. And basically it means that, like, for example, we use like auto scaling, we have FinOps, like where dev FinOps, where we're showing to every team what it costs to run these services, and they can, like, if something looks not right, they can optimize the code. And then it also reflected in our choice of technology. So for example, I know like we use a lot of Scala code instead of Python code because Scala is more effective. And then in some cases, we even implemented some features in Go or Rust because it's even more cost effective. Yeah. So basically, it's kind of like you see how it's kind of, we basically start from very top, from company values and company culture, and then it's reflected up to like a particular team within engineering where they pick technologies based on this kind of values and culture. Or another thing is, like for example, we have a company culture where we optimize for learnings. What it means for us that we do a lot of A/B tests, but from engineering perspective, what it means that we need to build our architecture in a way that allows us to do like a lot of A/B tests. So we have like backend-driven UI, and also like we have like very fast feedback loops. So whenever we launch like new feature, we immediately see some metrics, and we can act on those metrics, and we can switch feature off or on depending on whether those metrics are good or bad. So it's kind of like, I think these values and culture, they very practical in a way because they reflect it in kind of day-to-day activities and day-to-day decisions that a team do. And then another example about this learning thing is that we also believe in continuous delivery. We believe in fast feedback loops. We do like a lot of CI/CD. So it's kind of the same, but like from engineering perspective. Just a couple of examples, but if you're interested to know more, I can show more.
Oh, that's really good. And I like your CEO of Flo Health today posted like a very nice post with a lot of insights, and I was a little bit surprised. It states that you guys are running 300 experiments per month and up to 150 active ones. As a person who was involved into A/B testing, feature flags, and stuff like that, my only practical question is like, how do you survive with such a huge amount of experiments, and how can you actually get the real data with some level of certainty? Because you're running experiments in parallel, you need to be able to distinguish one data from another and how one affects another. That's impressive scale.
In our case, we are lucky that we have a lot of users in a lot of countries and so on. So basically, it means that we can have like enough data to kind of make decisions from those experiments. But we also had to build our own experiment service, which kind of allows us to do this amount of experiments. But then we also invested a lot in tools to deploy new experiments without mobile releases. So for example, we have backend-driven UI, and basically we can change UI interface without changes on the client side through the server, and it helps us to ship those experiments much more. But you're absolutely right. It kind of it's quite a science to understand which experiments are good or bad, and to make sure that like they statistically significant. Yeah, and but I think the secret sauce is just to have enough users for that, and to have enough architectural flexibility to allow such amount of experiments to be developed. Like, so I think we're just lucky to have users and good architecture.
Well, having users always helps, right? On that, like, if we were to consider a spectrum, right? Whereas one end is the experiments are run centrally, like there is a single, A/B test manager who decides what to run, what not to run. That's one end of the spectrum. And the other end of the spectrum is like any engineer can ship any feature behind a feature flag, look at the data independently, and take a decision of whether to almost like mainline or skip the feature. Where do you guys sit on that spectrum?
Well, we close it to the fact where every engineer can deploy like a new experiment. For sure, it goes through like certain quality gates, like QA checks and like automated checks. And if it's some health feature, it's slightly different process because it also involves a lot of like medical reviews and compliance stuff and so on. But we can do a lot of experiments very quickly, and engineers are allowed to deploy this. And actually, we even have tools for product managers to switch on and off some features, or like analysts can do that, or QAs can do. We also developed some tools to create like experiments in no-code fashion, like where you can have like some WYSIWYG and you can adjust some screens through WYSIWYG and actually non-business people can do that. Or for example, we developed like a chatbot platform where like medical experts, they can create like some chatbots without engineers. So like we invested a lot into this, but we still on this side where kind of everyone ships experiments and every team, they independent, but they govern through the same experimentational service and they follow the same processes across the org, but they independently can ship and make decisions.
Right, so this is like, I believe, some sort of a framework that everyone follows and it kind of magically works unless you do something out of the ordinary, but I believe if something out of the ordinary is needed, it's like more careful planning is needed anyway. Okay,
Yeah,
it's like
exactly.
last question on experiments. Like, you know, as they say, the curse of A/B tests is that 90% or like maybe more, depends, 90% of A/B tests are inconclusive, which is fair, you know, especially if you do a lot of them in many instances, maybe not 90%, but like in a huge amount, you'll find out there is no real difference between option A and option B, right? If you were to recall the most significant impact on whatever metric, really, like retention, monetization, usage, whatever, it's like found in a single experiment, what would that be? And what was the magnitude of the effect, you know?
Well, I think this partner mode, which you mentioned before, it's a big and unexpected actually result of experiments. So basically, we haven't expected that like millions of male users will install Flow on their phones. And I think we expected like that we have like very small segment of the users. So basically users who are trying to conceive, only these users will invite partners and only for those users partner will install this app and they will use this app together. But actually we found that more users want to share data with their partners and they do that for various different reasons. Someone wants to follow pregnancy, someone just needs some support. So that was quite unexpected and a big experiment that we did. And it was done relatively simple, in a simple way, because the first version of partner mode was very basic, just like couple of screens inside the app. That was big. Sometimes, you know, like small changes in colors make big difference.
Oh, for
Or like
sure.
you just change, you know, like I know, but I think the most impactful experiment they kind of also bold. You know, it's not just like, oh, we adjusted colors somewhere. You completely redesign like a main screen, or you completely change like sign up flow for the users, and then it makes difference. Otherwise, it's kind of like small, like 5% here, 5% there. But it's also important to mention that like we have very different users. So what we see a lot that like some experiments, they in average kind of gray, but they work very well for a certain audience. So for example,
Right.
sometimes we do experiments like that in average inconclusive, but like on low end devices, they show some significant lift of metrics, like maybe retention is growing, maybe usage is growing, but it happens only on low end devices, or maybe it happens only for a certain age of our users. So I think what we do then, we roll out these experiments only like to this subset of the user. But like in most of the cases, our experiments, I think in our case, we have like around 20% of our experiments will be rolled out to 100% of our users. And so it's kind of like a good rate of experiments, because basically we also have very interesting process how we prioritize ideas, and analysts very involved into generating ideas. So basically they may check some ideas even before we do experiments. So yeah, because of that, we have quite high number of successful experiments as well.
The idea that 4 or 5 experiments, according to you, they are going to be ended up just not shipped to production. So it's very cheap to test something and not build something solid, which is actually going to be supportable, deliverable to millions of people. And the scale, like 20%, it's quite impressive rate, I would say. Let me ask you one more question. Like I was surprised with this like LinkedIn post with the numbers, and 300 experiments, impressive. But I was impressed second time when I scrolled to another slide, which is, let me quote you, you planning to invest $200 million into product, which means into R&D, like medical development, software and stuff like that, during next few years.
Yep.
Could you please elaborate a little bit? Because from what I'm seeing, you already spent 130 for last 10 years, and you want to spend 200 in the next few years.
Yeah.
You expect growth?
Yeah, for a long time we were a very small team with very little amount of users. So basically, like when you have 5 engineers, it's really hard to spend a lot of money on R&D. But now when we have 200 engineers, it's much easier to spend. So basically the costs or like investment into product, they accelerate over time. And then like even let's say if we add like just 10% on top of whatever headcount we have right now, it's one thing to add like 10% to 20 people, it's just two additional engineers. But if you add 10% to 200 people, it's like 20 engineers. So it's like different scale. And then our infrastructure becomes much bigger. Yeah. So recently we signed like 50 million contract with our infrastructure provider, which is kind of a big deal. So cost of our team is growing. We also invest a lot into infrastructure, and we buy some tools and technologies to be a power horse of our product. So investment, the rate of investment is accelerating. And exactly, yeah, we are going to invest 200 millions in the next 3 years. And I think it's kind of a little bit counterintuitive for a lot of people who don't use Flo on a daily basis, because basically they think that we are just period tracker. We have like small calendar with few features, but in reality is different. And we have a lot of features. We have chatbots, we have community, we have symptom checker, we have cycle predictions, and we invested like 7 years of our data science team working just on cycle prediction algorithms. So it's kind of a lot of efforts. And it's kind of like an iceberg, like you see only 20% on top and the rest is hidden and waiting for right moment to kind of appear in front of our users. So for example, pregnancy mode, we have pregnancy mode inside the app, but it's invisible for most of our users. And then for these 9 months, when they're pregnant, they see this mode and they enjoy this mode. But then it disappears again, or symptom checker. You don't need to check your symptoms every day. Maybe you do the symptom checking like every year. And if everything is good, you just don't use these features at all for next year or so. So like a lot of features are hidden, and basically that is why it kind of feels as a simple product, but in reality, it's a lot of R&D, a lot of challenges. And it's the cherry on top is that we have a lot of users. So basically, even like small feature added to the product might create like a big load on the servers. Like for example, recently we added, right now we are working on sleep tracking within Flo, and we added data from wearable devices, and we are synchronizing this data every day. So basically like very small feature, but taking into account that like we have 70 millions of monthly active users, and they synchronize data about sleep every day. So it's a lot of data points, and basically it's not that easy just to support this functionality, and yeah, that's how we invest into Flo.
Yeah, that's like just one small correction from my side. You mentioned like small product. No one ever in their own minds would mention a product which runs 300 experiments per month a small product. Like no one ever. You're not small at all. But thanks a lot. It's a good clarification, and you are profitable, so it's not just investors' money.
Yeah, exactly. We are profitable, and we reinvest like most of our money into product development or R&D. And we recently got we fundraised from General Atlantic, which is big investment firm. But the idea is that we are going to keep this money for like to deal with black swarms. Like you always need some cash on bank account, but we aim to invest as much as possible into product, because basically we are still on this phase where we are building and growing fast, and we want to accelerate this. Yeah.
All right, look, we talked a lot about what was happening at Flo. We talked a lot about what is happening at Flo now, right? I feel obliged to ask you, what's next? What are your plans, guys? What do you plan to do in the next 3 to 5 years? Sorry, it sounds like an interview question, but you get the drill.
Yeah, so in terms of like technologies, I think two big topics. One of them I already mentioned, it's wearable devices. They actually becoming more useful over time. So temperature sensor works very well. There are a lot of other sensors. Glucose tracking is coming to Apple Watch sometime soon. So like a lot of data points, and finally this is accurate data, and it's very objective data, because it's not like, oh, I feel that I have like something. It's actually measured through some smart device on your wrist, or if it's like a smart ring on your finger. So this is a big topic for us. And another big topic is all advancement in Gen AI. Again, we don't have Gen AI in the production right now, but we do invest into this. Today we had a discussion how to fine tune, like Anthropic model, and not just like through prompts or like RAG, but actually do like a proper fine tuning. And I think it might change a lot, because like interface might be different. It might be that user interaction will be different. It's much more personalized to a particular user. So it's another big change. But we also have like very pragmatic features in our roadmap and backlog. Right now we are working on features for more mature users, more adult users, like 35 plus years old, because we have more and more of those users, and we need to provide like completely different experience to them than for users who are like in more early stages of their life. And partner mode is a big topic. So like this interaction between like female user and her partner is a big topic for us. Investment into privacy, another big area. So I think it's a lot of like challenges ahead of us, and I think sometimes I feel that this is just the beginning for us.
Look, it's been very insightful and very interesting talk, and I feel like we only scratched the surface of many topics, but equally I think it was a very good overview of many things and a good deep dive into flows. So Roma, thank you very much for coming and for answering so many questions from our side.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thanks a lot for very candid feedback, very straightforward answers. It was a pleasure.
And that marks the end of our podcast. So hope you enjoyed that. Please do subscribe, do like, do apply to Flo, do all the good things, don't do bad things. And see you soon.